There is a widely held view that places of learning should remain free of politics, and hence academics should stay politically neutral. Usually, neutrality implies academic silence in political debates, which can sometimes have immense social, economic, environmental, public, and political consequences. The advocates of this neutrality argue that it's the best course to ensure no section of students is alienated and their education is not compromised. But can places of learning remain free of politics when what they teach itself is determined by political instead of academic considerations? In Indian universities, from the textbooks to the curriculum to the policies for selecting faculty to the code of conduct for students, everything is political and ideologically informed. Dante, the famous Italian poet, writer, and philosopher, once said, "The darkest places in hell are reserved for those who maintain their neutrality in times of moral crisis." Should a professor of science remain neutral when a government-backed quack denounces modern medicine in the midst of a pandemic? Is it possible for a professor of history to not take a stand on the growing demands from India's far right to revise history? Can a professor of constitutional law remain silent in the face of the current hijab row? Should a professor of international relations not share his opinion if Russia invades Ukraine? And more importantly, is silence in the face of political upheaval and social turbulence still neutral? These are some of the questions posed by those who root for academics to openly air their views. However, in today's hyper-polarized political climate, speaking up can have serious consequences. It may entangle an academic in a public controversy they're not equipped at navigating. Further, it could alienate some of their students and co-workers. At best, it may prove to be a temporary distraction from research and teaching, and at worst, it may result in a highly adverse, life-changing career outcome. Many are therefore reluctant to intervene even when they have valuable information and well-founded opinions to contribute to a debate. But is the job of academics only to prepare students to pass exams, obtain degrees, and become employable? Do they not have a bigger role to play in society? Especially as we witness a deluge of misinformation and general confusion, should it not be a moral and professional obligation for academics to speak up and not leave important political discourse to those who benefit from it? This is a tough question, and opinions tend to diverge widely. It warrants a free and open discussion among prominent members of the academia. Argumentative Indians would like to initiate this discussion, and to that end, we are proud to host this conversation with Dr. Ashok Swain, Professor of Peace and Conflict Research and UNESCO Chair at Uppsala University, Sweden. We invite you to become a part of this discussion. Please share your views and questions in the chat window here to get invited to the panel. And also, do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more such interesting and interactive sessions. Welcome again to Argumentative Indians. So, Dr. Swain, thanks a lot for joining us today. Before we start discussion, I wanted to understand, why do so many academics remain quiet? Why don't we hear more public voices from academics?
Thank you for having me. I think it's a very important topic, a topic close to my heart. So I'm glad that I could really share this with you and also discuss. There are always pros and cons in these matters, but why academics remain silent? Because it's very comfortable to remain silent. I can sit down here. I have all the whatever the my job is not dependent, or job doesn't really get any benefits because I can speak or I can put a voice about anything and the part which is political in nature. You see, what has been that there has been some sort of expectations from the society and from the academics themselves, how they should behave. They should dress in a particular way, they should walk in a particular way, they should talk in a particular way. So I think there is a certain kind of expectations has been by the academics themselves and the society as such. And So I think it has been the idea that if you give an opinion on political matter, it doesn't reflect well on your academic career, but also it might reflect sometimes that, hey, this guy is not very serious on what he does. And it also doesn't have any kind of benefit. It has many losses, unless you really intend to pursue a political career, because if you want to get the political master's attention, and if you want to do directly politics or getting some kind of political positions, which usually given in different parts of the world, particularly in India. So if you don't have that, why you enter into this area where you get all sorts of threats, all sorts of accusations. Your life will be, not only you, your family will be threatened. You go through all kinds of crises. So I think that's why the academics don't really get into it. The regime or the governments also don't want the academics to speak up. Because why they don't want to speak up? It's all over. Because academic only, they want the academics to speak up to justify what the regime is doing or support what the regime is doing. Once the academics speak their mind, then there will be questions will be raised. And I think this is where neither regime is interested. The society has certain kind of expectations for how the academics should behave, and how the academics themselves have put certain kind of restrictions on themselves, what should an academic should look like. So I think those are the reasons which has kept most of the academics, I say most, there are some people, those who have taken the plunge, but I think there are most of the academics, to answer your questions, haven't really gone out and speak their mind.
Thank you. Do you believe that university should be a neutral space, free of politics? And is that even possible?
You see, there are different ways to look at it, what university should be. University is not a kind of a place where you try to build something for you. It's not a kind of a military establishment that it is something for the bringing out certain kind of workforce only for certain type of people. The university is a place where you get the space for the free thinking, to question, to have the ideas, and it's a knowledge generation center. It's a place where you generate the knowledge, and I think that's where our idea of creating universities as a certain kind of militaristic structure, where it will be some way supporting a certain kind of nation building projects only. That's where the problem lies. I think the real idea of a university is the education, creating knowledge, and how that knowledge will be, and what that knowledge should be, and what that education should be. I'm now the UNESCO. Like, take for example, the UNESCO usually gives a certain kind of ideas that what should be education will be. And now, because the UNESCO after 50 years is trying to change its recommendation, how the peace should be is taught in the different universities and the schools. And I think what the peace is, that's also important to know, unless what you think is supposed to be. So in this context, I think university has a role. I understand that, to educate people, but also to educate the right way. What is right? What is free? Well, I mean, the right means it's not that there is a certain kind of only one structure is there. It's supposed to be a place where we have a freedom to think, freedom to have ideas, and freedom of expression. This is where if the university doesn't give that, what the problem takes place. I think let's take it directly. We look in the Indian universities. India has a fantastic university structure, or used to be. We have all taken the benefits out of it. India has a huge personal capital or intellectual capital, which is there, why Indian universities are so behind in producing the knowledge which is new knowledge. And that's where I think we need to ask this question, that do we have the possibility to question? A question is extremely important that to give to because otherwise you keep on doing the things which have been told to do the things. So if the student doesn't ask the question, doesn't have the right to question the professors, forget about questioning the parents at home, because that becomes a very cultural issue. But I think what happens, at least in the universities, the students must have the right to question the professors. Does any university in India give the possibility for the student to evaluate their professors? No. If you don't evaluate your professors, how the professors will change? Because in most part of the world, or most part of the world which is really producing new knowledge, there the students can question the professors. Why we are not allowed to question the professors in India? Are there so much untouchables? Untouchables in a different way, that they cannot be touched, they cannot be questioned. Unless we question these things, unless we give a free space of thinking, free space of ideas, the universities will be only producing good bureaucrats, those who are really implementing the policies in a way, good bureaucrats in a colonial structural way, rather than producing new knowledge, which is unfortunately taking place in India. And not only in India, there are many other parts of the world that is also happening. But I think if India really wants to think carefully how the university should be, it should be a free space for anyone to question anyone, to have the ideas of interactions, possibilities of argument, debates, and all this. Argumentative Indians, I think this is something which this is very important, that to be argumentative. But what has happened now, the university structure is not anymore argumentative. It has become a place where people are either banned to speak their mind, or if you are able to speak their mind, then you will be abused or harassed. So that's not argumentative. That doesn't give a place for arguments at all.
So in that way, do you think part of that might also be cultural? It's not just India, the culture of hierarchy, where we put our professors or others, they're at a higher hierarchy, and we just don't feel comfortable asking them questions. It's something that we also observe in other Asian countries. Obviously, the culture in the West has been much more conducive to arguments and debates, much less so here. But at the same time, given the hierarchical status a professor commands in the class, if the professor were to take a stand on a divisive issue, wouldn't that make it even more difficult for a student to share a contrary view? Like, wouldn't the student just close himself if his view is different from that of the professor? Just because here they don't feel that comfortable debating and arguing. So like where does this not accentuate the risk of alienating some students who might just shut themselves because they do not ideologically align with the professors?
There are various ways you can really look at it, how that should be possible. As I mentioned, that it is very important for the students to evaluate professors. If every course, in the middle and in the end of the course, and this evaluation takes place, and those evaluations, because students will also have the right to judge a professor's competence in teaching, providing free space for the discussions, having an open mind. Of course, everyone has its own ideas, but if those ideas have to be, in the academic sense, as I keep on saying, have the freedom to express, anyone should do that. And because what you say, it's a culturally, or it's even culture keeps changing. We cannot be culturally always staying. If we say that we will be culturally like that, then we will be, we go back to our Mahabharata ages. So we don't need to be doing that. We need to keep changing. If we want to be a modern nation, a country which needs to be prepared for the 21st or already 21st century, already 20 years, 22 years gone. But I think it's a somehow we need to change. And in that sense, I think it's a change has to be from the professor side, at least. Professors should be willing and open to be evaluated by the students. And that will be, once that happens, that culture of that you cannot question your professors will go away. And I think that's very, very important as I see it in this context. I will tell you one instance. I was attending a seminar with my son, who was invited to this Nobel committee, which is in Stockholm, but they usually organizes, there is a Nobel museum, they organizes different seminars and workshops for the different companies, how to produce new knowledge. The first thing they asked that you should question. And he was giving, I mean, the guy didn't know that I was in the group, but he was telling, I mean, it's a lot of many years back. He was telling me that he was giving this, I won't name the Indian company. The Indian company invited this Nobel Museum group who gives this workshop on producing new knowledge or new ideas. And the first thing when this guy said that you need to question your boss. If any employee can question the owner of or boss of the company, the managing director of the company, and that is the time the owner stood up, because owner was in the room, he stood up that don't teach them to be rebel. And in that context, so then you understand what happens. Yes, it is initially difficult for the students to come from different background to come to a university campus. They might feel threatened by the professor's presence. But when I moved from Odisha and then moved to Delhi University, I saw that some students are asking questions. Then we got the confidence of asking questions. It's a very, it spreads. So one does it, two do it this year, then it will come the next year, and the professors and students get used to it. You cannot say that we should stop that process because some people will not able to open up this year. But if they don't open up this year, if we don't start the change, they will never open up. So I think it's important to do that idea of change again. And there is also this idea that I think this is a very false conception that the students, those who are politically active, they don't do well in academics or they don't do well in the career. That has been proved completely false in all kinds of research. That is not true. Like we have in India that if you're good at sports, then you will not good at studies. So we don't, 1.4 billion people, we don't produce. I mean, if only one champion comes in, and the guy who have become the gold medal winner in India, he actually came from 1 billion country came to my town which is 200,000 people live here. He came to train here. So after that training, he went back, got the gold medal. I mean, this is something which we need to ask these questions. Why a country like India doesn't have that kind of possibility also to open up their students to do all kinds of things? It's like, if you look at the research, if you look at the survey in American universities, those students, those who are politically active I'm not saying that you should be all politically joined. One thing, because we all want them to be good citizenship. If you are engaged in this civic engagement, you will be good citizens. But also your career-wise, it is no correlations that you will do bad. Rather, it shows that you will do very well. So I think it's a somehow, this is a bad idea, that thinking that the students, those who are engaged in the political discourse or political debates in the universities, will not do well in their career. The other thing is that the professors will not able to allow that kind of space to go on. So if the professors are the problem, I do have a solutions for that. That's a very easy solutions. Ask the question, give the students the possibility to evaluate professors.
But hasn't the politics on the campuses and the meddling by political parties resulted in the degradation of so many once great universities of India? On the other hand, where politics has largely been kept out, like the IITs and IIMs, those universities have thrived. So that makes a lot of people think that the only way that you can allow a university to retain its education, academic standards, is by keeping politics entirely out of the sphere of university. How would you address that contradiction?
I think we also need to realize that there are various other issues that why politics has been a part of in certain universities, politics has become a bigger issue because those universities probably are much larger. There are different type of disciplines are involved. There are people from the different backgrounds comes from. The people, those who go to IIT, IIM, they have a different ambition in life, different aspirations in life than to the different universities other universities where they go. And it also depends on how the political parties and activists they really work in those where they target. Because it's somehow it is also important to realize that we cannot really put in the similar kind of measurement for IIT and IIMs and any university in West Bengal or Odisha or Andhra Pradesh or UP, that you will see that similar type of work will go on. I think then we also the student. I mean, it has been not only even in the university where I teach, there has been certain kind of aversion of certain students to get engaged in the political activities, but it's not like that because of the some things, but I think the new way the careers demands are, the way things are changing. So there has been some sort of aversion that, they think that is a time is not, they don't have the time for these things, those kind of things coming up. But I think when we go back to this, it is not that the politics in the campuses in India is to be blamed. It's the political parties, those who use these universities for their political purposes, needs to be blamed. Those are the people, those who are really creating those, that they are using the university or university students for their own political benefits, and they are treating other students not as enemy forces. And I think that's where it happens when in a it's either right wing or left wing. Whenever those kind of populist regimes do come in, they have very limited or very skewed idea of what democracy should be. I think that is the time they use the universities just for their own political purposes rather than providing the space what the university should be, an open space for all kinds of debates, ideas, and discussions. And I think we should not blame the politics in the university. We should blame the political party or political parties or the politics going on in the country to put those universities into this place. The Indian universities have been extremely successful, producing high quality knowledge and high quality researchers, and they are serving all over the world. So what is the problem despite the politics which is going on? Despite the political debates which was going on, it doesn't mean that the universities haven't been successful before. So what has gone wrong? We should ask the questions now to the political masters, those who are putting the idiots as the university, running the university campuses, those who are absolutely having, the problem is if you put a politically, I mean, I have no problem if whatever your political ideas are, but if you should be academically good enough to run that kind of academic institutions. But we don't have those. We are getting the people, those who are absolutely idiots, who have gone into the academic career for using all sorts of means, and they're getting these positions, and they're really using these universities for their political masters. That's why we are seeing this nonsense going on in the universities.
But the general view for a long time has been that especially premium universities and other institutes of higher learning, not only in India, but across most of the world, at least in democracies, have been bastions of liberal thought. They are seen as much more biased towards left-leaning thinking and left-leaning ideologies. And it's just natural that a government which has a contrary ideology, a more right-leaning government, is basically what their claim is, they're trying to get some balance. These universities are indoctrinating students instead of just preparing. So how would you address that? A part of their recruitment tilt might be a reflection of them trying to get some balance in these universities, which are perceived as already tilted a lot towards left politics.
If I can ask you the same question to you, that why, if you are educated, intelligent people, are more left-wing rather than right-wing? These people, those who are in academic campuses, those who are educated people, and you say the universities are more left-wing rather than right-wing, then there is something that there is a good about something to be left to the center rather than right to the center. And we rather than listening to that and trying to change our ideology, you don't really stop that, isn't it? I mean, because I wrote a piece sometime back in Outlook. I think they took it out, but then there is probably, I saw it somewhere, it has come back again, that why the right wing is usually how the right wing is looked at in the universities and how the left wing looks at it in the university. Left to right, center. I'm not saying the pure left or pure right here, but usually what happens, the left has been always, or the left to the center has been always these ideas of inclusiveness, openness, being compassionate, being ideologically inclusive. And those are the things which is you will seek. The right wing always seek order, high security demand. Those kind of things which makes it a certain kind of not really a good environment for an academic campus to run. So I think ideologically they are very different, that how a right wing looks at the university. And I think in the beginning, I brought it to this issue that how the right wing really looking at the university as a producing, it's like, I call it the Second World War time when all these European countries created, or we can even call it the Chinese line of production line, that you create a certain kind of individuals which will be think in a particular way, which we call it the Indocentric or nationalistic idea of nationalhood. That doesn't work in the universities. The universities, I think it is extremely important that the smart, intelligent people must have the possibilities to open up ideas. So if there is if the universities are really controlled by the left to the center ideas or ideals or intellectuals, you create the people when you have the power, and then you really able to match them academically, intellectually. So why not to open that space if you are ideologically strong or ideologically you think on the right track? Why you close down that path to let people to be open to these ideas of, because you own the power now. You put the people where you want to, let the make space open for the left to the center, right to the center, or far right or right wing, whatever you want to say. Have a debate, ideas. I was studying in JNU. I was in the center of JNU. There are two professors. One was very close to a Congress party, who was a part of when I was a student. The other one was very close to BJP and very close to Vajpayee. So, and the center, we take their classes, going there. They had no problem between themselves. We had no problem with them, but we were exposed to the ideas of BJP and Congress while Congress regime was there that time. It was not there, that was not possible. So I think, I mean, so provide that space rather than saying that, hey, universities are controlled by these academics who are the left wing, so we will stop this discussion.
So since you asked me first, what would be my view? Why so many people who come out from high premium schools and and have higher learning, why are they more left leaning? They tend to be left leaning. My personal answer to that would be because once you acquire the skills for critical analysis, and that's really what's taught to you at the master's level, at the PhD level, independent thinking, critical analysis, and original thought. And once you have that, you are more likely, you are, or I can say you're less likely to be indoctrinated or be impressed by ideas of ethno-nationalism or and all the related ideas. So you are more likely to be left of center. But I've been in many debates like this, and the view I get from my right-leaning friends is that that's not the case. The reality is because these places are dominated by the left-leaning people, all the high universities, that when students have to go through that process, they become indoctrinated into left-leaning thinking. And to your other point that you mentioned, that why when you bring in, why don't you just allow them room, right? When you have the power, open the doors for them to come and through their academic excellence establish and go up. But the charge against universities is that they have been acting as gatekeepers, not allowing people with alternative thoughts, ideologies, uh, by different things, like by not giving them enough citations and other things, that they are just being locked out of these elitist circles that are represented by high universities. And this is what BJP is trying to do, is by changing the administration or the people at the top, they are trying to open the doors for people with alternative vision, alternative ideologies.
Tell them that if JNU was not allowing anyone with the other ideas, why from that time they found the people who is their finance minister, who is their external affairs minister. These are all trained people from JNU. And I know many of their intelligence, police, administrations, many of our friends, those who are running the national level chiefs, those who are serving this present government, they're all come from JNU. So how on earth, if JNU really trained them in a particular way and didn't allow them to have other ideas, they found the vice chancellor for JNU now, who has been also from JNU. So where they got these people? So either they are lying, which is true, or they don't know what they are saying. Because I think it's absolute. Yes, there is a possibility. I agree. There have been areas that there have been certain kind of political class when it takes the power. It's always. I think universities should not be. If you ask me, I think the government has no business at all whom to appoint as vice chancellor. I'm not saying that it should not be by the right wing or left wing, whatever. Like we do it here, we select our vice chancellor, who will be the vice chancellor. If the teachers, staff, and the students decide in an electoral college who will be the vice chancellor. That's something which should be. The government has no business to manage the universities in that sense. So I think it's a part of the problem there. But even if with that problem, when the government, whichever government imposes the vice chancellor and others, there will be certain kind of biasness towards a certain kind of ideology. I'm not saying that it is not there. It will not be there. So that is part true. But I think saying that there is no space for others, that we will brutally crack down the people with other ideas, the people with other views, people with other political affiliations. That's where the problem lies. The problem is, I completely understand. Yes, in your time, you used to employ your vice chancellor. We will employ our vice chancellor. But that is okay. That happens all over. But the problem takes place when you don't provide the space in a democratic country for other ideas to reflect, or other ideas, or particularly in the university sense, other people to operate in that context. And I think that has been the problem.
So we have someone from the attendees who has a question for you. Sachi Mohanty, please go ahead. Sachi Mohanty. Can you hear me? Okay, I think he's... Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Maybe the questions are in chat probably, or?
Yeah, yes.
So yeah, I think go ahead, Sachi.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, Professor Swain. Just want to
Hi.
read my question from the chat. I just had people like Richard Dawkins in mind, but let me read this. If we lived in the time before Galileo, Copernicus, and Copernicus proposed the heliocentric model, it should go against prevailing beliefs of the vast majority of people in that society. What do universities and academics do in that situation? And does that have some resonance to current events in Karnataka and so forth?
I think it is always important. This is a very important question, Sachi, because I think I didn't really get the time to think, time to tell why academics needs to speak their mind at this particular time. You see, where there is a political masters will be telling all kinds of things because that is their politics. And when the different populist regimes, which are globally an issue and also in India, there is a different type of ideas will emerge. But who will be providing the idea which is supposed to be has some truth into it? Because when we are discussing about in the era of alternative truth or alternative facts, the kind of things which have been told that we have been creating our own history or writing it, not rewrite creating history, but at least you are manufacturing history. This time, who will really do it? And there's also the knowledge. Before this, that's a populist thing which has been creating. Like take for example, when if you challenge climate change, if you challenge the science itself, if you challenge the vaccines for the or you ask initial comments when you said that these are the things which are taking place, these kind of ideas. If the historians will not protect the history, if the scientist will not protect the science, if the prime minister goes to a place such that the Ganesh has been kind of being possible because of some kind of operation, because he got I mean those kind of crazy claims when the prime minister makes in the beginning of his prime ministership, it's always fish stinks from the head, and that has been the case. Everybody is giving ideas, creating all this kind of nonsense. Who will really protect it? I had a friend who had moved to India some years back. He was a very, I'm not going to name him, but he was a very famous researcher in the West. He went back. He just like some of the those who want to go back, he went back. And he also initially very excited about the 2014 when the present government came in. But after 2 years, he moved out. He went back to US again. He said this is not the area because he's not he has completely no political affiliation. He's a very good friend, comes from south of India. Absolutely no political affiliation, extremely excited about the present government which came into power. But after 2 years, he left because he said, this is not the place, because the politicians are telling me what to do, what sort of research I will do, carry out in the lab. And if that is the case, if the university or professors don't speak up, what is the point? The point of doing this research, point of finding out this, 97–98% of scientists saying that the climate change is taking place, but nobody's listening to, or that's the kind of things where nobody's doing anything if we don't speak up. I think this is some things we need to realize, that the idea of professors are speaking up is extremely important, not for others, but to protect also their own professions. It's not they are doing, the thing is that they are doing anything for others. It is that your knowledge, your professions, your own future is going to be affected. I know dozens of my researchers or professors, friends in India, feeling extremely suffocated, extremely threatened, extremely, they're not politically active people. But they can't open up their mouth. They can't openly say some things, what they really believe in. And if that kind of situation arises, then whether anyone listens to or not, when the society listens to or not, at least you sleep well if you speak the truth, if you speak your mind. I'll give you an example. I was giving a lecture some years back when I used to be before your Modi came in. I was giving a lecture in Uppsala into a number of international students in the science faculty. I was telling them that how China has been quite successful in eradication of poverty, despite being a communist regime. While the India economic growth, that time economic growth was matching China, but India has fallen behind of achieving economic growth, eradicating poverty the same manner, despite achieving the similar type of economic growth like China, also being a democracy. So that really irritated some of the democratic students in the classroom, because they thought that this is something which is probably I'm propagating that you should be an authoritarian regime rather than a democratic regime. And that is the time a student asked me that if you are given an option where to live, China or India, where you will live, I will say I will anytime will prefer to live in India rather than in China, because that's where I have a freedom to say whatever I want to say. But can I say that now? This is where the question lies. The question is the idea, is the kind of knowledge, is the kind of freedom which we all aspire for, and the academics, which are supposed to only not for just for their professional progress and what they're committed to. If they really want it, they need to speak their mind, whether anyone listens or not. If not today, they will not listen it. Tomorrow, somebody will.
Right. Thank you.
And just to understand, how do you suggest that academics should speak up? Do you suggest turning the classrooms into platforms for them to be vocal, or through open letters or editorials in newspapers, publishing books, podcasts? What would be your suggestions?
You see, these are very different people. I mean, you can't really have a frame for everybody to act in that way. As I mentioned before, academics do not get any kind of professional benefits by speaking up, because rather they get more and more. I mean, when I'm speaking, I'm getting 5 emails threatened with a threatened letter to me. It's coming up here. So it's somehow not in yours, but in my emails also coming. So I think why an academics will do it. So those are the things which are part of life. I understand that everyone has the different way of doing things, but at least you should have freedom. A freedom that but in the classroom, I have already discussed that. The classroom discussions have to be, a professor must say that this is what the theory, depending on what it is, but this is what is my opinion is. But you should give the possibility for the student to question it. And when you really judging their papers, or you are grading their papers, that's when your grading those papers will be on the basis of the arguments they have made, rather than what sort of arguments, whether you like it or not. So the possibility, a professor has a role of how to keep his mind open for all sorts of ideas. It's not only telling it, it's also opening up your own mind for the different ideas, different kind of thoughts to prosper. The other thing is, what you do, it depends on the different places, so different countries, different ways to do it. Of course, you can use, nowadays it's not anymore confined, but of course there is a possibility that you can produce the policy side papers. When you contribute it, that always gets some kind of benefits, though not directly academically, because you get some consultancy, you get certain kind of things that invited to certain kind of different policy making business. But I think talking about politics, this is something you have to be in the classroom as well as outside. Also being politically active in a sense that you can write to the newspapers, you can be openly give lectures, but depends on what your subjects are. It's not that on or what the platforms are and what you are comfortable at. If you are comfortable at, you should do it. What my point is, you should not be feel restrained or feel threatened by other forces that you cannot open up your mind, that you will be punished by the state or by their supporters, by the regime or by your bosses because you spoke your mind. And it's up to the academics to decide where they are good at, why they want to do it, and where they can really make some kind of changes. But the most important thing is open up their own mind and the possibility of having that freedom to open their mind to outside world. These are the two things very important.
We have a question from Abhirami Bonia. Abhirami, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, Dr. Swain. So I would like to give an example in order to give my question a little bit context. Yeah. So I had two professors. One was politically vocal, and he used to tell us where he stands with politics and where he stands in the spectrum. Another was not so politically vocal and would shun away from talking about, in quotes, politically controversial issues. So this person who was politically vocal, I was rather comfortable in his classes because it made sense to me that he was talking about his politics. However, I also felt like a lot of students sort of like shut off or did not really talk about their politics or their leanings because they were, say, scared of not being politically correct. And on the other hand, the professor who sort of like censored herself and did not really, wasn't really vocal about her politics, I saw that people were a lot more open in her class to like sort of talk about their political leanings, their stance on international issues, or their stance on, say, something like CAA and NRC. So while I agree with you that academics are supposed to be politically sort of vocal in terms of where they stand, but I also think that applies to a limited context in the sense that I'm a little worried that when students get into college, like when we're 17-year-olds and we're just beginning to develop what we call political consciousness, it's very easy to be carried away by what a professor is saying because that hierarchy at the end of the day is sort of present. So while I have grown to disagree with professors far more than I used to, I'm also worried that as young people, it often gets very difficult to distinguish between what somebody else's opinion is and what your opinion is. So how do you think we need to address that? Like, these are two sides of the same coin, I understand, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I find the youngsters are quite more politically opinionated now than what they used to be in my time. And I think that there is lots of information out there available. There is lots of information coming from the sources which are not, they think that they know also because of the access to the internet, access to the different people from the other side. The knowledge has become not anymore confined to professors. So once the knowledge is not confined to the classroom professors, you do get that kind of feeling out. But I think I agree to you that how you create that kind of possibility for the students. That's very important, that to tell their mind not to feel inhibited, not to feel threatened, to open up. That's the role which the professors can do. And I think that's what I was explaining much before, because I think the idea is the idea is that we have a certain kind of restraint. When I was 17, 18, I mean, my daughter, and when she's 18, she always challenges me. So it's not that people don't do that, but I think that you need to provide that space for that kind of debate to take place. The professors has the particular role of, despite having a political opinion or opinion of certain kind of ideological opinion, but it has to have that openness and to show that openness to give that kind of space to the students, that they will feel comfortable of raising these kind of ideas of their own. And I think in that context, we need to break that barrier of that the professors are always right. And I brought that issue in the beginning, that the professors need to be evaluated. If the professors are not, look, I might have an opinion, we disagree, but if I give you respect and the possibility of expressing your opinion, and I don't take any kind of actions, or when I grade it, that reflects on my, because I'm not so, I don't confine myself that only my thinking is the right way of thinking, then I don't see the problem taking place. The problem takes place. Problem is not having your opinion. Problem is that if you don't provide the space for the students or for anyone to have their opinion and to have the respect for them and to provide them the space for that. The persons who do not have, the person that is always refrained from providing that opinion. I'm not saying that is not how you deal with the classroom. That is absolutely up to you. That is those kind of things. It's not that the classroom should not be every academic should be politically active in the classroom. That is not what I'm saying. But I think what happens, that I'm glad to hear that the teacher was willing also to hear out people having their opinion, not really restraining them. And I think it is also very important, even if you don't have it's a secondary thing if you have an opinion and how you give that possibility. But the most important thing is to encourage your students to have their own political opinion and not to really discriminate on the basis of their opinion, but on the basis of their academic ability, and provide that open space for them.
Abhirami, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
To quickly bring in one last question in this session. So that's going to be from Nimish Joseph. Nimish, please go ahead.
Professor, this is Nimish from IIT Delhi. Sir, first of all, I was eagerly waiting to listen to your session in Literati, but somewhere we missed it. My question is, my administration in the past, now we have a new administration, in the past constantly used to remind us, saying that whenever you participate in a political discussion or a debate, please do not use the name of IIT Delhi. Do not mention that you are from this particular institute, or do not even wear the t-shirts of the institute. There are also times that we have been issued some notices saying that do not criticize the government using your social media handles. And that too from the senior professors of the technical side who have been saying that there are people who are surveilling it. Probably the future postdoc prospects of ours, visas, and everything might be getting affected. So this is the argument that the people from the administration pass on to us. How much do you agree? And one thing that they used to remind us is that if you want to do something, do it in your own way. Do not use or do not say that you are from a particular institute. Do it in your personal capacity. So how much do you agree or disagree with this? Thank you, Professor.
I think there are two things. One, university, or particularly institutions and institutions with a repute like IIT, which I have a huge respect, where I come from JNU, and as I was mentioning before, I used to go there for my evening dinner most of the time, but because you had a better food than our canteens. But I think it is all absolutely important for the universities and the university of that nature to provide that space and possibilities for the students and the faculty to be civic minded. The idea of engaging in political debate and discussions, political activism, because that's what the taxpayers' money is being paid to create great citizens, great people, great human beings from this university. So university is not doing its job if it not only encouraging you to providing you that space, the idea, that is not failing in their duty, but particularly the professors and the administration, if they are restraining you, saying that you should not use our university's affiliations or because university's name while doing it, I think they are doing a disservice to not only to the themselves, to their profession, but also to the society. Why? I'll tell you why the reason. The reason is that you are in any academics must have that possibility and open space to express themselves. You cannot really restrain people that saying that you are allowed to say something, you are not. I mean, depending on, of course, there are certain restraints, but the freedom of expression, for heaven's sake, is given in the constitutions. And if we are, some things which you are supposed to be proud of, that is supposed to be there. But also, it also, as I mentioned from the beginning, that how that possibility of being engaged in the civic life, being politically active, being politically creative, that also helps into our future career development. I think they are doing a huge disservice to this. Look at the kind of things which happens. There have been people writing against me. I'm thankful. I work for a public university in a country like Sweden. There has been at least 500 petitions against me to the university chiefs, our chief university bosses. But I have never
petitions from India or local.
Yeah, mostly from India. Also comes from the different, but I think mostly from India. My Indian fan group is a bit high, but I think. But I have never been asked by my university leadership or university authority that what the nonsense you are doing, that we are getting all these petitions. Nobody has asked me. Only thing they asked me that what they can do if my security is okay or not. They only worried about my security rather than anything about that. You know, that sort of protection university administration has to provide, that this is a space where we must have the possibility to open our mind. I mean, look, if there is we are open to have all these kind of debates and or questions, and we can be negated, we can be questions, we can be fallen flat on our face, that those things are all happens. But if we don't, if we confine ourselves, neither you are going to be a good scientist, nor you are going to be a good citizen, nor you are going to be, I mean, doesn't work. So I think it's, what can I say? I mean, I wish I had that platform when I was invited to Literati. I thought that they probably done some mistakes by inviting me. But then I thought I was not very surprised when the event got cancelled. But I think I was really looking forward to talk to you people.
Nimish, as an IIT Delhi alumnus, let me just give my 2 cents here in defense of IIT. I think the reality is the political climate that we have in this country is what it is. By giving you these instructions, what I understand, the way I take this is they're trying to protect themselves as well as protect you. I would see them more as a well-wisher. Yes, Dr. Swain is right. They might be doing a disservice to you in the long run, but I think that their thinking is more that IIT should not have to go through what JNU recently had to go through, what Jamia Millia recently had to go through. They do not want IIT to be subjected to that, and they do not want the students to be subjected to that. So that might be more of concern. But the problem here is that political climate like this is created to get exactly this outcome, self-censorship. There is no rules from the government stopping anyone, but this is self-censorship, which is playing out here. And the only solution for this is more people to violate it, to speak up. That is what the whole point is. Academics speak up, and as students speak up. And the fact that you are here and you told us that you are from IIT Delhi and you are participating in this conversation, you are already violating it. And if thousands of others start violating it, then the political climate, its objectives are entirely fail. And that is how we succeed as a society.
Thank you, Yajur. Thank you, Professor.
It's a climate of fear. It's a climate of fear which really restrains rather than anything else. And we as academics or in the academic community are very susceptible to this climate of fear. And I think that's what needs to be broken down. That we need to say that this is what we can tolerate. This is some things we can. There is always, I'm not going to make because these are the things which you do it for professional, for your personal integrity, not for any kind of profit or not kind of any kind of making your career out of that. But I think the kind of way the people are acting from the Indian government or Indian regime or Indian regime's supporters, this is absolutely unthinkable about the way things are happening.
Dr. Swain, there's one thing that we sort of have not been able to cover in this conversation is the fact that unlike the United States, where most of the premium schools are private schools, in India, most of the universities are public funded. And I think that creates a difference. We see a difference between the academics from a private university, say Ashoka, versus academics from Delhi University or others. The kind of constraints and pressures that academics at public universities face is obviously going to be very different. In the US, the universities are so well funded through the endowments of an alumni that the academics are given a lot more freedom in order to express themselves. But I think
I have a different take on that,
yes, please.
if I may, because I come from a public university, and I think it depends on which country you are. A public university has a larger possibility of, because if you are following your own constitutions, your own democratic behavior, then a public university is much better for an academic to open up, speak up, rather than a private university. Because private university have, even in the US, some of my colleagues are restrained to speak something and not to speak something. We don't have that restraint here. So I think India, it is supposed to be, because your jobs are secured, you are getting the taxpayers' money. So this is more, but as we say, things are not the same. So it's not the public private. It's the problem lies with the who is controlling this public university.
Okay, and I think we are towards the end.
Sorry for that, but that's a comparison.
Thank you for that, bringing that insight here. And to conclude, I would request you, to share a brief message for the academics in India right now.
Sending a message is something big, and I never think, but I think it is important that we as an academic, we have got into this career, not for the money, not for, because this is a career always will be pay less, but we think that we are so much committed to this kind of profession or research or teaching. That's why we are in this, we are doing what we are doing. And we will not able to do well, or will not able to serve the kind of purpose which we intend to do if we don't have that kind of freedom or possibility to get engaged in the day-to-day politics, on being politically active. Because we should not really do good to ourselves, not to the society, not to our professions, not to even the country, or whatever the way you want to see the humanity, if we don't really do, if we don't really speak and we don't come. I mean, if there are only, of course, now there are very few people are speaking up. That's why they are being targeted. As you mentioned, if we all, or almost, if 1% of the academics start speaking, then there will be no regime can really do anything. So I think it's better not to wait for your turn to come. Your turn will come. I mean, in this kind of regimes, never say that they will stop on somewhere. So your turn will come, whatever, unless you become a collaborator, and which you will repent after some time. But as long as you want to have that kind of idea of living in a democratic, secular country, which is a modern, which is civilized, then I think it's that high time that we should speak our mind. We should stand up for whatever. We shouldn't stay the kind of false comfort zone which we have been used to.